What up, everybody? Well, I'm here to do a very quick unboxing. Happy April. And I want to say Easter is within a couple days. I hope I will have time to do this. So, two things I got. Some Kidcore girls that I need to make sense of their hair and put some clothes on this one. So, I wanted to say that this came from Texas. And I also got in this Tommy doll. As I've talked about in my other video, you probably couldn't hear. I wanted a boy version of this doll. And while there was exactly one doll that fit that description on all of eBay, listed, I think still out there around 15 bucks. And when you add in tax, it'll be more. I got my hair cut, unfortunately. A little short for now. So they had a boy Lucky doll, like I remember them having in the aughts. But that doll was just listed too high for such an ugly doll. And the hair was kind of longish, kind of like Tommy's hair if it was like this, down to there. So instead, for a lot cheaper, I found some Tommy dolls. And since the eyes, let me see if I can put on this light. The eyes are kind of what makes or breaks the doll. There were several Tommies that have those similar eyes. And this one needs to be flipped around. And so, rather than waste my money on a $15 doll who will not make me happy, I decided to just, buy the real deal for the boy, even though I already have some Tommies. They're all slightly different. So, I shouldn't have done it. But I bought a lot of Kidcore and, little Killy dolls. Spring is in the air, unfortunately. I'm happy to be back. Not happy about the weather. Finally had my mom help me fix my raglan. The Snoopy shirt. Cut the sleeves off and make it shorter sleeved. Dad cannot help me sew. And, just pleased with what I got. But obviously this is my least favorite part of the year, that we're getting into. The only saving grace is that we still, have cool weather hanging on by a thread. It can still get cool, but not for much longer. And just did a lot of thinking while I was at my mom's, this getting sick in the springtime for the first time in years kind of threw me for through a curve. Oh, and the other thing I bought that I forgot to mention, bought some shoes for another doll, which we might talk about in another video. So, yeah. Just really am at a loss for words. And what I want, I know one thing I wanted to talk about, as much as I'm really tired of that whole subject and would like to move on, I want to talk about how that third movie, I was just thinking about it and thinking, it's been 6 years. How am I going to post some old videos? And I wish I could comment on my old self, but I can't quite figure out how to do that. But I was thinking about that third movie and how they just ruined the show. they ruined what few, one of the reasons why it did so poorly. Number one, it was neither here nor there, as I've stated before. I mean, if a kid is old enough to enjoy a PG movie, if a kid is old enough to enjoy something that isn't so innocent, then they're old enough to watch something about teens or adults, not a stupid cartoon about babies. So that's what I mean, neither here nor there. That's what they're creating when they make these shows, that have crude humor, but they're about young children. It's like, who do they think they're making that for? Because children need to have nicer, more innocent content. And people old enough, to see something crude, could watch something more in their age group, like a movie about teenagers in high school. And that's why middle childhood is so underrepresented on TV and in dolls. Because it's like you're either little and innocent or you're, that's why these mid-sized dolls are so precious. Because it's like they're still little and innocent, but they don't look young enough to be in diapers. They're neither a driver nor a baby in a car seat. That's what I like about them, mid-sized dolls. Tween dolls, I guess you could say, although that's a silly word. They're grade schooler. So, and this one came with a cupcake of sorts. It's a Prince Tommy with a cupcake. No shoes, but he has a cupcake. So, I opted for that cheaper alternative of all things to what used to be the knockoff cheap version made to look more like a boy. And so yeah, the movie was neither here nor there. If you're old enough for a PG movie, you're old enough to watch something that's not about babies in diapers. And if you're young enough, to watch something in that age group, then you need it to be G-rated, like Finding Nemo. And it's like that with so many things. So, movie was neither here nor there. And it destroyed what few things were good about the show. Like not having boys with men's voices like Donnie. And not having animals that talked. If I had to write two things that I like about the show, that Spike didn't talk most of the time, neither did Fluffy, and that there weren't more than a few one-time boys like Emmett and like the boy at the daycare that had men's voices in toddlerhood, precocious puberty. Well, Donnie Thornberry ruined that, and Spike talking, ruined that too. So I guess the only way it could be worse is if they rewrote it in such a way that they were black, because the show could have been worse also, if they'd have all been black instead of just Susie, and like if Susie's brothers would have had men's voices and been on the show more often. Because that was one of the few things I liked about the show, was that it was about little boys whose voices hadn't broken, so to speak. And while there's nothing wrong with men, voicing characters, they should be stated as 13, ideally about 13 on up. If they're significantly below 13, it doesn't make sense to have a man's voice. Now, a little below 13, 12 and a half, that's debatable, but, so they ruined the show in what few ways it could have been ruined with that movie. Donnie having a man's voice, Spike having a man's voice, despite being a dog. So yeah, I'll go ahead and post this video. Happy Easter.